Hello, Facebook friends. I have been really enjoying, by the way, in terms of this coronavirus shutdown, that I have had so much more time to do Facebook videos, which I never did prior to this. So I will jump right into this. I've done my best to use my platform really just to get people to ask important questions. There has been a lot of hype, a lot of promises, a lot of politicians saying things that we need to do to get back to work. And it is so important that in a time where people are feeling fearful, that you don't subscribe to things that really just don't make any sense. It sort of is the reason why I've been questioning the 6 feet social distancing rules, and there's no empirical data that's proved that that's helped when you look at Sweden or you look at Tokyo or you look at the plenty other countries and even states that aren't doing that. Case in point, South Dakota never shut down. They never implemented any of those policies because the governor, Kristi Noem, deeply believes in freedom, and they have 6 deaths to report. We know that Florida has more hospital beds available today than they had starting in February when this pandemic began, and Ron DeSantis really held out. He was the last governor to shut anything down and the first one to immediately say we're reopening the beaches. So there's just way too many instances that we're seeing where people are taking opposite methods and having better results than people that are taking the most extreme draconian measures to fix things, like New York City and Governor Cuomo. So I wanted to just talk about what we're seeing now. We're starting to see people say, the only way we can reopen is if we expand testing. And I want to encourage everybody to think through this with me. Okay, so are they implying that the testing is going to be compulsory? If they're saying that what we need is more ability to test to open back up society, then they would be implying that they're going to make the testing compulsory. Does that sound right to you? Do you think that if the testing was not compulsory, all 330 million American citizens would go get tested? Because they won't. There are entire pockets of people who are saying they will never get vaccinated and that they will not get testing because they find this entire circumstance to be shady and dishonest, and they just want nothing to do with it, right? Unless you are going to put in place a policy that says that they mandatorily have to get tested, then all of this is for naught, right? Because if half the population stays at home and doesn't get tested, case in point, the many of testing centers across America that are empty because people are simply not choosing to get tested for it, then all of this is wasteful. Then let's ask the question, okay, let's say you do make the testing compulsory. Let's say they say every single person in America must get tested for COVID-19. Well, talk about overwhelming the hospitals and the doctors. That's a lot of people that need to get tested. And for what? Presumably, you could go get tested on a Tuesday, and if this virus is as deadly and spreads as quickly, as virulent as they've said it is, then you could get tested on a Monday and get infected on a Tuesday. So what would be the point, right? If the virus jumped 6 feet and every single person can get it through the eyes by being next to someone in line, you could be getting the virus while you're waiting in line to get tested. None of this makes any sense. This is just more doublespeak, political doublespeak, more promises. And they do this because it makes some people who are deeply fearful of this thing feel like there's some measure or some mechanism of control that they're able to invoke because the government is expanding testing. No, if coronavirus is as virulent and as deadly as they say it is, more testing is not going to stop the spread. In fact, it will likely increase the spread approval rating from the government. Let's say you test positive. Let's say they say, you know what, it is compulsory. Every single person in society must get tested, all 330 million of you, however long that takes, right? And let's say you go and get tested and you have it. But you're asymptomatic and you're fine. Is the government going to say you have to necessarily go on house arrest? Let's say you have it and your son or your spouse does not have it, right? So he's able to go to work even though he lives with you, and you could potentially be giving it to him while you're at home and on house arrest. Does any of this make sense? Is anybody thinking through any of these things that they keep saying? I feel like every day you wake up and they move the goalpost. It's like, you gotta have a mask, you gotta be 6 feet apart, you gotta hop on one foot, you gotta have compulsory testing, and everyone's like, yeah. And nobody's pausing to think and realize that all of this is absolute BS. It's all BS. It makes no sense. There is nothing that testing is going to fix at all. There's no shortage of people that are trying to get in and get tested and can't get tested in certain places, right? In New Hampshire, for example, it was completely empty, the testing center. Somebody had put that up, had put a video up of it online, which means that people in New Hampshire are not all racing and trying to get a test. They're making a personal decision that they don't want to get tested. And that's their right, by the way. I personally don't want to get tested for coronavirus. I've heard people say, well, what the government should do is they should mandate the testing through the businesses, to say to businesses that all of your employees must be tested for this virus. Wow, talk about a HIPAA violation. Do you know how many other contagious viruses there are? Talk about a slippery slope, right? Talk about giving the government a lot of power. Could you just imagine that scenario where you say to people, oh, you know what? Now you have the right to test for things as a business to see what viruses people have. People could have HIV, people could have HPV, people could have a slew of different sexual STDs, infections. Are we just going to give that power to businesses now to be able to collect your blood and analyze it to see what contagious things you might be carrying in your system? I had a discussion earlier with a Washington Post journalist, a very, very, very thorough Washington Post journalist, who was asking me a lot of questions about just my tweets and my general perspective. And really what I say is I employ a common sense perspective when it comes to this. And I have from the beginning. I've always thought that if everything the government was saying was real, then we're screwed. Right? We're screwed. If it really is that, that virulent and the latent period is that long and it's that deadly, then there was nothing that we could have done to stop it at the time that we discovered it. And now that it hasn't been proven to be as deadly as they say it is, now that there are all of these anomalies throughout the world and within America of people who did not practice social distancing that seem to be just fine, of communities that never invoked all of these orders and seem to be just fine, I'm now really understanding that we're just kind of in the midst of what feels like media desperation, media hype, a media letdown, sort of one of those things when I'm sure you've all lived in a town maybe where they're like, this is going to be the biggest hurricane ever, it's going to be horrible, evacuate, and then you get just a couple of raindrops. That's kind of what this is chalking up to be, a forecast of a hurricane, and we're just getting a couple of raindrops. And I think that rather than be honest and come to the table and say, hey, look, we got some things wrong, but we think people should practice these safety measures until we know more about this virus, which would make us deeply respect the epidemiologists and the people that have been moving the goalposts. I would respect them if they said it was too early for us to know a lot and we're still learning more. But you know what? While we're learning more, get back to work. Right? Be careful. Wash your hands a little bit more. Wear a mask, maybe. I'd be okay with that. People said, you know what, wear a mask, be safe. But this whole idea of just constantly moving the goalpost and now saying that you're going to make, people try to expand testing as if that's going to put a dent in anything. It just goes against common sense. And I think that it's really important that every single person just consider the things that I'm saying. Ask the people that are running your societies, your governors, your mayors, your senators. Start demanding answers. And most importantly, don't believe everything that you see in the mainstream media. They don't know what to do with the fact that at the moment, it looks like this is going to be a situation where they have even more egg on their face. Thanks, guys, for paying attention. By the way, if you want to support me, you can go to gocandace.com. I purchased that domain name because it sounds fun, gocandace.com. And thanks for all of you guys that have been on this journey and have supported me from the beginning, but also have understood my sentiments during this coronavirus pandemic. If you want to get the vaccine, you can sign up. I won't be doing it.